When you know that you are queer, but your favorite drink is beer, that's gayish. You can bottom without stopping, but you can't stand going shopping, that's gayish. Oh, gayish, you're probably gayish. Well, life's just too short for narrow stereotypes, so it's gayish. We're also gayish. It's Gayish with Mike and Kyle.
Hello, everyone in the podcast universe. This is Gayish.
The podcast where it wasn't love. It wasn't love. It was the perfect illusion.
Oh, no. I bet Lady Gaga is a furry.
I bet she is like consistently surrounded by furries. I don't think she's one herself, but I think she's an advocate for them.
I'm Mike Johnson.
I'm Kyle Getz.
And we're here to bridge the gap between sexuality and actuality. And today
we're talking furries.
We're talking about furries. I'm so nervous. Okay.
Furries, you finally won. This has failed on the Patreon vote several times, and finally here we are. But we'll get to that in mere hours when we're done with the news.
We'll get to that. But first, at the $15 or more level on Patreon, if you send in 100 words, I will read them verbatim. And it is an underutilized benefit. But we have 100 words today. Comes from Brandon Pettigrew, who is the HBIC of our Discord server. Thank you so much, Brandon, as always, for putting together that awesome little community and keeping it going. But it's been plagued lately by a bunch of spammers and spam bots. It's been a little bit of a struggle. Here's Brandon's 100 words. To all the bots that keep spamming the Discord, I hope a Trojan horse fucks you so hard that you are deleted from existence. I would tell you to suck a dick, but that's enjoyable and you deserve no joy. I hope your digital life is filled with virtual Legos for you to step on barefoot for eternity. Will I join your shady Discord channel? Hell to the no. Will you take this ban real quick? Fucking right you will, bitch. Forever lurking and always banning, Brandon.
That's beautiful. It's like horrifyingly beautiful, like the movie Insidious. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Which quick pitch for the Discord server. It is a lot of fun if you want to have a chance to hang out. It's where we do our WoW guild night and all
that's why I was like edging us, like not like it's we're
edging
like
us? Were we edging just now?
Yeah, we were. Move on. This makes it sound like there's just tons of spam all over. There's not. It's a fun, active community. There's an occasional Canadian every now and then.
They have their whole channel, so you also don't have to put up with them if you don't want to.
Yeah, there's spammers and Canadians on our channel. Jesus, so much to deal with.
Goodness.
Do you want to do the news?
Yeah, here's the news.
Shut your mouth hole, it's time for your ear holes. News.
News the first. So apparently since last year, according to Rest of the World magazine, 200 couples from China have gotten married in Utah.
Okay.
Over Zoom.
Wait.
Yeah, so there's a quirky set of circumstances that make it possible. Same-sex marriage has been made possible in Utah because it has no residency or citizenship requirements for marriage licenses. The city of Provo, Utah, allows online international marriages, so therefore Chinese couples, and in China, same-sex marriage is illegal, you can still apply for, get a marriage license, and execute it online through Zoom in Provo, Utah.
Okay. So both the people getting married live in China, have no association with Utah other than they are calling in to Provo to be like, hello.
Yep. It costs about $300, and you don't have to have a visa or anything. You just pay Provo for a marriage license. Doesn't matter where you're from. You can totally make your marriage license happen over Zoom. So they do.
That's not, Provo can't like manage international marriage law. That's not, we didn't accidentally legalize worldwide same-sex marriage through Provo. Like we didn't, is,
yeah.
I should be fighting, I should be pro this, not anti this. It's a cool idea and a cool workaround, but does the country actually recognize U.S. marriages?
They do not. So these marriages do not have any sort of legal standing in China, but couples that have gone through it have said that their marriage makes their relationship feel more secure. And apparently Provo, it's not just that in China, just China's a particularly common one. There's been more than 3,500 international couples that have requested this kind of marriage, not same-sex couples, just 3,500 international couples, and a lot of them are from China, Finland, France, Kenya, all over the place. But same-sex couples from China are using it more heavily than others.
Provo, more like pro homo, Come back to me in a minute.
Right.
I'll ignore everything you're saying and think about this.
Great.
There is something, I get the idea that there's something, one, like the process, like recognizing a marriage kind of helps be like, hey, everybody, we care about this. We want this. We're doing this. Look, we may not be recognized here, but look, you don't think that we're the marriage kind of folks, and we are, and we want it. And also having some kind of documentation, that some kind of proof, like some kind of legal standing, I think is very useful.
Yep.
So I get it.
Well, so Liu Yangming and Zhu Guangzhu, both based in Guangzhou, China, did an interview, and they said, quote, "Before we would think we might break up someday, but now we can't just break up."
That's the gayest sentence I've ever heard. We thought we might break up, but now we're good. We locked it in. Can't break up. Sorry.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is a legal wedding, in that as soon as they cross the border into a country that recognizes gay marriage, they are married. And it's just their home country of China that doesn't. It is otherwise a perfectly legal recognized marriage. So it matters. Like it matters more than just like, calling your cousin and having a commitment ceremony like back in the old days.
Yeah. And boy, it brings so many visitors into the lovely city of Provo.
Virtually.
I mean, maybe the benefit to Provo is they get $300. I think in Provo that goes like, that's like, $1,000 in Provo money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's the exchange rate in Utah?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, you got to take out 10% for the Mormon Church.
Yeah. Tithing, mandatory tithing.
Yeah.
Anyway, congrats to all those couples.
Yeah.
News the second, keeping it international this week. So Real Madrid football star, that's soccer to Americans, Iker Casillas. What's an I sound make in Spanish? Iker is his name. Iker Casillas tweeted, "I hope you respect me. I'm gay." That was today, Sunday, the 9th of October. And then his former teammate, Carlos Puyol, replied to it, "It's time to tell our story, Iker."
Our?
And a heart emoji.
Our?
Yeah. And then both players deleted their tweets.
What?
And there has been a big controversy since then, because Casillas then later tweeted, "My account was hacked. Luckily, everything is in order. Apologies to all my followers, and of course, more apologies to the LGBT community." So now there's this whole thing going of, was it a joke gone badly? So delete, and then pretend it was a hack, or is that legit what happened? Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Or did he try to come out, got real negative reaction, and so had to go back in the closet? Like we're only speculating, but like that's a common thing that happens in the LGBT community, especially younger people. They try to come out and then they face a hostile family or work or whatever, and then they either write it off as a joke or have to go back in the closet, hide it, like take it back so that they can keep surviving.
Yeah, that's possible. That's not.
But no.
Well, no. That's just not my sense of what's happening in this particular case. Like I don't see anything in the reports of there being this like massive backlash. to him coming out. The backlash has been to, if you were joking about this, you are an asshole.
Yeah, but like, maybe the manager is super homophobic and calls him up, and we don't see that one person that's like, you can't do this to us or something.
Yeah. Totally.
I'm trying
valid.
to make up the like, well, this, I don't know, the most earnest way that this is possible. I guess, yeah, I don't know.
Well, so let's see. There's all kinds of hot takes from Twitter that I could give here, but one that sticks out though is there's an organization called Pride in Football that's a network of LGBTQ plus football fan groups in the UK, and they're saying that this tweet was, quote, "misjudged, ill-timed, and disappointing. We should not be seeing jokes at the expense of others in 2022 or ever, period. The homophobic reaction on the back of that tweet is not okay. It also isn't okay that we have to react to that tweet. It's a clear example of someone not thinking before speaking. Did he expect all roses and no reaction?
Wow, they're really going for the it was a joke, and he's
Yep.
Huh.
Yep. They seem convinced, which doesn't mean that they're right.
Right.
Anyway, maybe he's gay. If he is, I will for sure do an update on this story. Maybe they'll get more information, but like it's showing that there is a lot of toxic horseshit in soccer, especially in certain countries, and that we have a long ways to go.
Yeah. I mean, so like the biggest part of any news story like this that we didn't cover yet is he hot?
Yeah, would bang.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I think being hot makes up for so much homophobia.
Right. Well,
it's totally fine now.
Yeah, and just the more homophobic, the more you can make up for it with less clothing. Last but not least, this is how much Scooby-Doo news have you been following this week, Kyle?
Very little. I don't think. Okay. Yeah. No. I know a Google. I know a Google of information about it.
Yeah. Well, there's a conservative anchorman on Newsmax named Eric Bowling who went on a crazy rant tirade about the character Velma from Scooby-Doo coming out as a lesbian.
Yeah.
And this was this last Wednesday, and that's when most Velma stuff was happening.
When all the Velma stuff was going down, the Velma shit, y'all.
There's a reboot happening, and Mindy Kaling is going to voice Velma, and there's a bunch of like typical like mermaids just are white, they just are. Is it okay for this South Asian person to be playing a white lesbian cartoon character? Just like all kinds of crap.
This you can't even like. It's a voice. We're doing voices here, right. People. This is a voice. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Her voice isn't white enough to play Velma. What the fuck are you talking about? Right. So fucking dumb.
Yeah. Well, in this rant, he goes off the rails several times. Here we go. So he says, "Our beloved Scooby-Doo has gone woke," which, again, woke has just become a nonsense word that the right just uses it to mean shit I don't
things
like.
I don't like. Yep.
Our beloved Scooby-Doo has gone woke. Velma has come out as LGBTQ. I'm guessing she's the L.
Okay, to be honest, me too. That part I get it.
But she may be the B. I don't know. Perhaps I don't know. Perhaps the T, which would mean she's been a dude all along, all this time, right?
Oh fuck. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the Q. Truth be told, I can't really tell the difference between most of the letters. It always confuses me, by the way, folks. When a man decides he's a woman, becomes a woman, and then sleeps with women, why don't you just say a man? This is the shit coming out of this dude's mouth.
Yeah,
he's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
and he also brings up the idea that maybe Fred isn't straight, which I think is the most plausible theory this wacko's had. But yeah, so apparently writers and producers have been saying Velma is a lesbian for a really, really long time. And every incarnation of Scooby-Doo has the studio involved has refused to let them actually address that. And so
I have seen an image before this all happened that shows Velma and Daphne like before, and then they go in someplace and then they come out and they have like each other's clothes on. Like,
ooh.
Yeah. And I love any kind of meme with the descriptor. There's no heterosexual explanation for this. Like any meme tagged that is like my fucking jam. And that's one of them where it's like, why would you have on each other's clothes like that? Rumors have been set, like circulating that she's a lesbian with good kind of backing, with a solid case for it for a while.
Yeah. Well,
this is what we talk about when we say queer shit is not new. It's look all through our history, like the history of Scooby-Doo. Right. That's classic historical example of gays have always existed.
Well, and we're going to get to the association that Scooby-Doo has with furry fandom.
Oh, shit, Mike. I didn't even realize you're on topic. Wow.
I know, right, man? Yeah. If there's any more Scooby-Doo news, I will be sure to let you know.
Sure.
That's the news.
That's the news. Speaking of Scooby-Doo, here's our good snacks. I want to thank the following Patreon members: Jesper, Hangeras, there are 2 A's, just wanted to make it very clear vocally, Hangeras, and Victor Martinez. Thank you to our new Patreon members. If you want to get bonus episodes content, vote, for example, in polls about what kinds of episodes we do. We do a poll every single month. So go to patreon.com/gayish podcast.
Yeah, do it.
Do you want to talk about furries?
Yes, let's talk about furries.
Okay, why do you sound sad already?
I'm not sad.
Okay.
This was selected by our Gap Bridgers. This is our monthly poll vote, and we put up furries and feet and cuddling. And I'm still winning, Kyle. And
you're on a roll. You keep winning. I thought I had it with feet, but this is why you got to be a Gap Bridger, because it's up to them, and they wanted furries. And like I mentioned, we've put up furries a few times, and it hasn't come up. Furries and otters, both of those like seem to have a small contingent on Discord that's like always disappointed when those don't win. And
small but vocal, just like our Discord Canadians.
Just like my butt. Also our tiebreaker, which if the vote is tied, we default to voted on cuddling. So we are going to, as a Patreon bonus episode, which we do every month, we are going to talk about cuddling. I think that's kind of adorable. Y'all wanted to talk about cuddling.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of my favorite activities, so I was actually kind of sad that it didn't win.
Oh yeah. Well, it'll be fun to talk about then for Patreon. Just like you can give them the inside scoop on your cuddling habits. Question: is cuddling sex?
No.
Don't answer. We'll talk about it on the Patreon episode.
Shit. You can edit that out later.
Yes, if you didn't hear Mike's 10-minute diatribe on whether cuddling, it's because I cut it out. Okay. Furries.
Yeah. So I'm always nervous to do these kinds of episodes, and the reason is, I think, obvious, and we've said it before, but we have an hour and a half of content to make, so I'm going to repeat it.
I love when people say stuff purely to fill in the hour and a half. Yeah.
It is not a community that I am a member of. It is not a community that I understand, and I'm very afraid of saying something that is going to unintentionally be, derogatory towards that community, because I think that they're valid, and obviously between consenting adults, nobody's getting hurt. As we're going to discuss, it doesn't even all of it have that much to do with sex necessarily. I just, it's just one of those topics where I want to be sensitive to people's feelings, and I'm bad at that sometimes.
Yeah, I think this is very fitting for us to talk about, because there are a lot of assumptions and stereotypes that come along with furries that we've all had, that I don't know, generalizing is generally frowned upon, that a lot of people have, that people bring to this. There's a lot of stigma and prejudice, and so it's an interesting conversation topic, both to understand groups of people that kind of get shit on, that people don't understand, and also something that I think about when it comes to these kinds of episodes is, like, we are not news reporters that are like, if we were trying to be a news or reporting or that kind of podcast, it would be unfair to not have someone who's actually a furry on. But I think for us, the idea of learning about a community and sharing that information is useful. Like, to say furries have to be the ones to research and present information puts a lot of onus on furries. I think other people, there's tons of information out there, and as long as we're getting information from people that know this, and we're trying to accurately share that information, I think that's what you're supposed to do. And yes, we may like fuck it up, and if a furry listens, great. When we like talked about Black Lives Matter, part of the fear is like, oh shit, we're two white guys talking about black people in an entire community. But that's what we should be doing. We should, as white people, think about and discuss issues of racism. So I just think about
white people not talking about black people is the problem.
Right. Exactly. So I think it's useful to think about and talk about, research different communities and try to share that, in hopefully supportive and fair ways.
Yep.
So what is a furry? Just we'll quickly chat about like furries and some some terms to know before we really get into it. But
Yeah, so there's a really great site called furscience.com.
fuck
And
you, Mike.
what?
That's where I got all my information.
I legit ignored all of that site except for what I'm about to read because I
Okay,
knew it was
okay,
a treasure trove of shit for your shit.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I retract my fuck you. No, I'll just throw in a general fuck you that's unrelated to this, just for good measure. But keep going.
Girl, I'm in Palm Springs. A fuck you is exactly what I want right now.
With who are you with, Mike?
Some fraternity brothers.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Okay, back to
right, furries.
Yeah. So what's a furry? Sorry. First Science is a bunch of researchers who started this site with the goal of gathering and then disseminating information about the furry fandom community. Lots of really great stuff on there, including an entire whole section on resources for parents. Like if your kid is interested in this community, like what should you do? And so much of it, it's not overtly queer, but it reads so much like PFLAG stuff, right?
Oh, so much.
Anyway, what's a furry? Here's what it says. The term furry describes a diverse community of fans, artists, writers, gamers, and role players. Most furries create for themselves an anthropomorphized animal character, a fursona, with whom they identify and can function as an avatar within the community. Some furries wear elaborate costumes or paraphernalia, such as animal ears or tails, or represent themselves as anthropomorphic animals in online communities, such as Second Life.
God, all right, crossing out so much of my notes, Mike.
Oh, really?
I wrote down that exact quote. No, this is good. That means it's exactly what we should be talking about if we both have it down.
Yeah. And what's totally missing from that is sex, right? Like none of that.
Right.
None of that has anything to do with kinky shit, sex, nothing. And
Yep.
I was so surprised going through all of this how much that message sailed through. That
this is so much of the stereotypes are wrong, and so I think this is a really fun kind of way to explore the stereotypes in a different lens. But yeah, so much of just what you think of when an ignorant person like me thinks of furries is not at all it. So that's where some of the data will break down what's actually part of the furry community and what isn't. But for the fursonas, something I really liked on that site that to like add to the importance of fursonas is it's a way to explore your self-expression. There's creativity with coming up with this kind of character and concept. I'm talking about this because initially a fursona, like you can be like, that's either weird or I don't get it, or that's goofy, or these people like they have a problem, or there's something off about them. There are a lot of gut reactions that when you hear why or the benefits, it helped me as well to understand. They gave a couple examples, like if you're tall, having a fursona of being a giraffe might help you have more comfort in who you are and what you look like. Or someone may create a fursona to help encourage some of the qualities that they want, come up with your idealized self and help encourage qualities that you don't have. And we do this in so many different ways. Drag queens do this. We play D&D and we create characters and we do this. You and I do this like sometimes when I'm so bad at promoting and marketing myself that we come up with Lyle, who it is a different character for me so that I can be like, well, what does Lyle, our, independent marketing expert, say we should do? We all do this in different ways. So if you have a judgment of furries for doing this, then your judgment, either you're judging all of those groups as well, or you just are, kind of ignorant of what it means, and you have some preconceived notions that you need to get over.
Yep. To that point, like looking at the history of this, I realized at some point that like part of my reason for wanting to go into the history of it was to unlock like, where did this come from? Why is this happening? And it's almost impossible to avoid pathologizing what's happening, right? Like I want to explain this weird thing by understanding like where it came from, because it's wrong or different or bad. And it's you have to be really careful when you're doing that, right? Like with most fetishes, I think there's a very real desire to understand what's going on with that person, but you don't want to have it be like, tell me what's wrong with you. Like that's not the point. That's not, there's nothing wrong at all. And
Also, though, this is not a fetish. That's another
Right.
misunderstanding.
Well,
Like,
yeah, it can be, but it's not on the surface. It's not correct.
well,
Yeah.
okay, on the surface, it's not. Like, there's a subset for which sex is involved, but furry inherently is not a fetish. I think that's important.
Yep.
Wait, was that you leading in, transitioning into the history?
Not necessarily. I mean,
Oh,
I can. We're being freeform. I have a bunch of terms that I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if it fits in here, but there's this adorable list of. Okay, first of all, there's Wikifur, which is like Wikipedia for furries. Wikifur.com has a whole category of vocab terms that are actions. Like these are things that are common enough actions in the community that like they have generally accepted definitions. For instance, boop. I'm going in alphabetical order. Boop. But a boop is light tapping of someone's nose.
Well,
So-
yeah, I'm not a furry, and I know that. I've been on the internet, and I've seen pet pictures.
But apparently furries like to boop each other. The person being booped may playfully cover their nose or make a comedic squeak sound.
Mike, what's your booping squeak reaction?
I would probably so doing it to somebody I would be like boop.
Okay.
And I would probably say it back. Boop? I don't know.
That was a fun game. I'm glad
do you
I asked that.
do you have a squeak? Do you squeak? Are you a
I
squeaker?
don't. Do I squeak all the time, Mike? I'm just laying around my house, just fucking squeaking up a storm. My neighbors are like, "What's that? There must be a giant hamster living next to me because there's so much squeaking." Yeah, someone boots me, and I go, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, you could go woo-hoo, like the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Oh God, I bet. Okay, one of the downsides of us talking about a group that we're new to is we're going to make all the jokes and all the references that they get all the time, but it's new to us, so we think it's funny. Okay, then again, I do think Perfect Illusion. I doubt that anyone has done that yet, but there's so many furry puns. I'm sure puns.
Yeah.
I don't know this. I didn't read this, but I'm going to go on a limb and say puns is like a big part of this community.
Yeah.
They have the word fursona, so not like
Anyway. Yeah. They definitely seem to be just like both paws in on the pun train. So
okay, fine. You can continue to carry us to term.
Great. Let's see, face paw, which is just like a face plant or face palm, but it's a face paw.
Oh, okay. Yes, this is all confirming my theory that they're very into puns.
Yes,
face paw.
Yeah, absolutely. Floof is the apparently impolite act of fluffing a furry character. They're like if they're in a fursuit, you floof it up so that it frizzes or poofs out, and it puts like a static electricity into their costume, and is like that's bad form. So don't floof me, Kyle.
Well, when you said it's inappropriate act of fluffing a furry, I was like, what? Yeah. Okay, you mean and then you were doing the physical action of rubbing. Like, yeah, this is again not a sexual thing unless you want it to be, I guess.
Yeah, but to fuzzle, I guess is similar but not necessarily bad. But that's to like ruffle or mess up their hair or fur, but in an affectionate way. So floofing is bad, fuzzling is good.
That's a phrase that I had never heard before.
Yeah. Glomp. To glomp is a slang term for a tackle hug.
Oh boy!
So like a full body tackle hug is a glomp.
I'm gonna go and say only glomp furries that you're friends with. I wouldn't glomp a rando.
There shouldn't be non-consensual glomping.
No, if there's one thing I know about glomping, having just learned about it, it's don't glomp strangers.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of hugging that they talk about. There's different kinds of licking. There's a nuzz lick, which is like okay. Anyway, just
okay. They have lots of good names like Fursona's great, fursuit that's great. Nuzzlick, I'm gonna say furry community. Not a great. You can do better. I think you can do better than that one. I just want more from you. That's not your best one.
Nip is like nipping, just like a dog does, but is like sometimes is pinching or squeezing somebody. Of course, pounce is the friendly act of jumping on somebody.
Okay, Mike, now you're just defining words that exist in our everyday language. I know what pounce means.
Yeah, scritch. We talk about that with pets, right? Scritching. and going through the actions of that. Snuzzle is a sneaky nuzzle.
Huh. See, like that's a little better. That's a little better.
Anyway, that's like the actions. Most of them, though, most of them are terms that you're already familiar with that have to do with like pets and pet stuff and the way that we interact with animals.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because like there are things that already exist. Like you mentioned, I forget what show you mentioned already, but like there's
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo, yeah. Oh. There's the cartoon Robin Hood. There's My Little Pony. There's Sonic the Hedgehog. There are shows that exist that are just like some people in this community are people that like these shows, you know. So I think the idea that some of these words are common words that we've heard, it's not this foreign thing that's complete. There are common words that we use in reference to animals, and you know, there are some that are brand new, but
yeah, for sure. It's interesting to me how much furry stuff is like what we think of as being furry community is the fursuits, and that it's more than that your fursona doesn't even have to be a physical suit, and there's a lot of drawing that happens, like these elaborate depictions in drawing art that it is making their fursona happen. And there are plenty of furries that don't even own a suit. They're just doing their thing.
I will give you specific numbers on that.
Oh, okay.
Moments. Yeah.
Do you want to jump into some numbers?
Yeah, I can do numbers. Sure. So there's a website called Fur Science, and that website helps study and research cross all that out. They are also, that's the like public facing website. They are known as the International Anthropomorphic Research Project. For their research, the very first, they have lots of published research. This is a team of researchers who are doing real, actual scientific research into this community. And they attend, primarily do surveys through in-person conventions, which that's a big part of the community, and online on websites where furries meet up. They have surveyed and talked to more than 15,000 furries. Wow. As part of their research. And, you know, there's other people that they've also done for control groups to compare against. So they've done their shit.
Yeah, I think that's more than we've studied by people. Like all of the studies.
Absolutely. There's intersex people. Like we've studied probably 5 intersex people that we've ever seen in our studies, or like, you know, transmasculine people. Like, there's so many furry studies, which all of them, like, that's not to like, this I think is valuable, interesting, useful research. And also there's so many other groups of people that are also valuable to research.
Yeah. I think it's really fun too, by the way, if you go to the Fur Science, like about us, like who we are section, they've all got like their bios and their pictures, and a lot of them are wearing furry ears.
I will say there was like a few. I expected more. You can't tell a furry by their ears, but like there were a few. I looked back and like, they do seem to have furries that are part of the research team, and seem to be either, if not in the community, very close with the community, so you can tell that they really care and want to understand the community better. So that's awesome. Yep. Some of the general findings, this tends to be younger white men, and there are like
again, I'm in Palm Springs, tell me more.
The furry community and the Palm Springs community overlap so hard. God, but like that, if you actually wear a fursuit, like living somewhere warm would suck, I would think.
God, furries would die here.
Oh God,
it's October and it's 94 degrees outside.
Do you think there've been like, how many furry deaths do we have? Is there a furry true crime podcast?
Oh my God. Okay. This is not the time. You have to keep me on track, because like, okay.
What?
So there was a furry convention in 2014 that was attacked with chlorine gas.
Holy shit.
It sent 19 furries to the hospital, and the Rosemont police revealed that the attack was most likely an intentional act of crime against the furry fandom. So like if we wanted to start a furry true crime podcast, like there's an entire, like, already a thing that happened.
We've got our first case.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Wow, someone was trying to put down all the furries.
Yeah, at Midwest Fur Fest.
Wow. Okay, this does the serious part of this is there is like stigma and bullying that happens when you're part of the community. But
I mean, when you're different at all from like the standard, then like somebody's going to be awful to you because that's how fucking humans roll because we suck.
Yep.
I'd rather be an animal too. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to be a person anymore. People are animals, though. I don't know. Anyway,
That's
go
true.
ahead. Sorry.
I will also add, like, I am someone that I most likely, it's one of those things where you hear about something that seems ridiculous, it kind of like enters mainstream culture, and then everyone jokes about the same thing. I'm sure I've made jokes or shitty comments about furries, so I am absolutely, part of this group that I'm trying to now dissuade from doing what I surely have done at some point in my life.
Yeah.
It seems like an easy go-to punchline, especially when you don't understand a group of people, especially when you don't know how important it is to them. Yeah.
Well, here's another little tidbit I didn't know how to fit in. There's me and definitions and phrases and stuff, but there's a whole article on yiff in hell fur fags.
Ooh, that's a sentence you might need to deconstruct.
Yeah. So a fur fag is a furry fag or a furry faggot.
Is this a reclaimed word or an insult? Or
It's a derogatory term used by anti-furries.
Okay.
And it's a condescending way to acknowledge a fur's presence during online discussions and or a real life visual antagonizer. Apparently, people will show up to conventions with fur fag on like
wow.
a sign.
It's like their version of like, someone outside like Jesus hates fags. Like they have a similar thing.
So, and then because like vocab wise, because yiff or yiffing is the sexual part of the furry fandom, yiff then also gets used by the community, basically more or less as a replacement for the word fuck. Like, so yiff in hell fur fags is a meme, and it's like a GIF or a JPEG that gets posted in discussions as a way to disrupt it and bully furries online.
Damn.
And
that sucks.
Yeah. It's absolutely sucks. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, so back to numbers. There are 20% of furries are under 18, 55% are 18 to 25. So this is a younger group of people. There are people of all ages. So that's not to say that's the only part, but that's majority of the group.
That's like more than half are under 25.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Way more than half. 75% are under 25. And also this research said, like, for ethical reasons, we didn't study, like they did estimate the number that are under 18, but didn't study under 18-year-olds. They thought for ethical reasons not to do that. So most of this is 18 and over, but at least when understanding who it is. Most tend to be assigned male at birth, although there is a very high percentage-wise contingent of LGBT and trans LGBT, that is trans, but like in higher percentage of trans people in this community. I'll get to those numbers. Most live at home, or about half live at home with their parents. And I only mention that because that's probably a joke people make, like, you probably live at home with your parents. Yeah. And also it factually seems to be, half of them, that's true. So maybe,
but doesn't everybody under 30 live with their parents because we totally fucked them economically?
Exactly. So it'd be very easy to pick out a person and like make fun of them for that, when it's like, no, this is just what happens when you're young right now, because no one has any money and has huge college debt. Okay. As far as a couple of things that are the percentage of intersex people is 0.2%, which is, relatively small, but I only mention that because they did actually look at intersex people. Like they are studying all these facets, which I loved that the study included that.
That actually seems like good for them for studying intersex people, but that seems low to me, right? Like I'm always interested in like how do the percentages in this community correlate or correspond to percentages in the general population, and I would think that there would be more than that intersex people. Is that true? I don't know.
I don't know what percentage of people are intersex. So I don't know how it compares.
Or like is the fact that apparently it's a bunch of white bros, like does that exclude people, make people feel like they're not welcome?
I think white bros is a bad characterization, or like it is mostly white people, but like they tend to be very like liberal, accepting,
Mm.
non-religious, queer, that. So it seems to be a very accepting community in general. That seems to be a priority for this community. There are 10% of furries are non-binary or genderqueer. 4% reported being on disability. So disability came up when looking at employment and income. And I thought it was cool. Like, again, understudied communities, 4% were presumably disabled. And then to explain more on the number of LGBT people, 22% marked that they are exclusively heterosexual. So they had the options of exclusively heterosexual, like mostly heterosexual, like they had all these options, and only 22% said they were exclusively heterosexual. That is the largest contingent of people, of orientations, but of course, much smaller percentage than the general population. So it's both, there are cis het furries for sure, but also there's a big overrepresentation of LGBT people in the furry community.
So it's gayish.
It's very gayish. It's very gayish. Okay, I mentioned that they tend to be younger. So now, like, they actually have a book called For Science with an exclamation point, if that matters to you. It did to me because I wrote it down. And they took like 5 years worth of research and put it into this book that you can actually go download and read. This is where now I'm going to get a lot of the information. It's at furscience.com/publications, and it came out in 2016. So I looked through all of this research and picked out the things that I thought were interesting, or, we could talk more about, had some kind of relevance to other kind of types of things we talk about.
Very cool.
So first thing that I liked is age. I mentioned they tend to be younger. The average age of a furry is 16 to 17. But there is a term, gray muzzle. Now, gray muzzle. What?
I just, yeah, I know.
I like when we don't even have to explain. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, Kyle, I have gray pubic hair. It's like, it happens.
Okay. That's information I don't know. I mean, thanks for sharing. I validate you. That's fine. Do people like that? Is there like a group of people that, people like how the salt and pepper hair? Is there a group of people that like the salt and pepper pubes?
I will let you know.
You'll surely get a reaction to that. See our episode on pubic hair. That'll be fun. And it's just going to be, the entire podcast is going to be a picture of Mike's pubes.
Great.
Most downloaded episode for sure. A gray muzzle. You might be a gray muzzle. Here's your sign. No. Gray muzzles are someone either who have been in the furry community, in the fandom for a long time, or are older than the average furry. Now, to know, there is a debate on whether gray muzzle is an acceptable term or if it's offensive. So this is super interesting to me when you learn a new terminology. Since being in the LGBT community and researching all this shit, I tend to know the word, like the nuances of all these words. But in a brand new community, you learn a word and then it's like, oh wait, but I don't know if I can say it or not, or use it or not. And so, this research, given how either involved or allies of the furry community these researchers are, I don't think they would have, they said most mentions of it were in a positive, non-pejorative way. So I trust them to, it seems mostly okay, but just, it's like also one of those like, hey, just know this is not a word for everyone. Very much reminds me of the word queer, like mostly cool, but you may get some reaction. And that's, I think, helpful context to know how do you, there's so many complexities that, we as outsiders can't know unless someone kind of explains that debate.
Maybe just don't until you hear somebody else do it.
That's I think something that I thought of as well is like we always say, for queer people, let them define, how they identify and then respect that and use it. So yeah, like if you don't know a word, like don't use it for a group of people unless they're calling themselves that, in which case, maybe better to then you go along with it. So that's a consistent thing.
Yeah.
9% of furries are gray muzzles, and on average, the average furry has been part of the community for 6 years. The average gray muzzle has been in the community for 12 years, and their average age is 42.
Oh, okay. I've aged out already, I guess.
No, averages include ranges.
I know. Okay.
Mike, let's break down what an average is.
I know.
Sorry, I'm being mean. Let's talk about sex.
Let's
baby.
talk about sex, baby.
Let's talk about yiffing, baby.
Yeah, yiffing.
Okay. This is sex as in I'm loving it. So this survey ranked or presented, here's a lot of things about the community, and then asked people to rank how important are they to the community. For everyone, they asked people to rate them from 1 to 7, 7 being it's extremely important to the furry community, to 1 not at all important. And sex was among them. They also included other things like art is important, or the top sex comes in at a 3. So for a lot of people, this helps dispel that stereotype we were talking about, that it's just a sex thing or it's a fetish. A 3, it is low importance to a lot of people in the community. The ones that were above a 6, which 7 was the highest, so that's the among the highest. In order from highest is art, community, acceptance, conventions, and internet groups. So those are the important things to this group, not sex, or not putting on a fursuit, or not like.
Yeah, what's interesting about the like sex being a 3 though is my guess is that that's a shitload of 1s and a few 7s, as opposed to like the whole community saying it's a 3.
Yes, there are absolutely people that think this is important. Sexual attraction is a motivator for about a third of furries. Not the only, like, even if sex is a big part of it for people, it's a motivator. It's not the only motivator. It's not like it's only sex and nothing else, but at least for over a third of people, sex was a big motivator or reason for being in the community. So yes, it is a part of it. It is not a majority. So that's where I think we as humans see, or outsiders see, a portion of people that not only are there furries, but there are people having sex, and that's the most unique, outlandish thing to us, and that's what we grasp onto, and that's the thing that then gets plastered all over the media, or we joke about, or whatever, and then that's an unfair representation of the community. It's not a wrong, like, there are people that is what they're doing and what's happening, but it's also not everyone. I think this is a common thing we see across so many things we talk about. Like, there's some truth to it, but it's not, but it really misrepresents it. Fursuit. These are people you mentioned that like actually put on a physical, like have physical items to and have a fursuit. I
ran into a couple of furries at a party in Boston this week.
No way. Were you like, hey, I'm talking about you?
Well, we didn't know, because we didn't know what was going to win. But I definitely noticed. I don't see furries out and about in like queer spaces. I don't see them at the gay bars, at least not in Seattle. So it was very interesting to me to like actually like run into some in did
you talk to them at all?
No.
Oh, okay. So what costumes do they have, or what, I don't know if costume, if they, I don't know what words they like, but what was their fursuit?
Like a wolf or a coyote kind of a looking suit. I'm sure that there's a distinction between those two that is lost on me. Yeah, but like with the big head, with the full like fur body, big paw hand gloves. Yeah. And a tail, big ass tail.
That sounds to me like a full, like complete fursuit. I don't know, like I don't know, but 10 to 15% of the furry community has a fursuit. So this is not the norm. 25% have a partial fursuit, so that might be an individual item or items, but not the complete thing. 50% want to have one. There are just limitations on, its cost, or being in public, there's stigma and prejudice. So there's a lot of reasons you may not have one. So even if you just look at all the people that want a full fursuit, that's half of the community. So again, that's one of those things that, like, yes, there is a big part of the community that putting on a fursuit is part of it, but we think of that as being the only part of the community and being everyone, and that's not at all true.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The most popular, if you have part of a fursuit, the most popular item to have is a tail, and 48% of people have a tail. And I think it was like I didn't write this down, but like 75% of those who have a tail wear it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Your fursona. This is the furry plus persona we talked about. And this is one of the things that, if you actually want to know what the vast majority of furries have in common, this is a thing that the vast majority of furries have at least one fursona. You can have more than one fursona. It asks about like current fursonas versus lifetime fursonas, so it can change over time. But fursona is an actual integral part of the community, and that doesn't include, or doesn't have to include, putting on any kind of gear.
Okay. Yeah. Also, make sure, like, I have more than one D&D character, or have before.
Yep.
Like,
yeah. I wonder if drag queens like ever have, you eventually land on one, but I wonder if there are drag queens that like try out different like characters or something. I've never never heard of that now, but I just made me think
well,
of
like celebrity impersonator drag queens will do multiple celebrities. I've seen that a lot.
That's a good call. You're right.
Yeah.
This I thought was really interesting. For 62% of people with a fursona, which again is most furries, for 62%, their gender of their fursona is only ever the same as their gender. So a majority will pick a fursona that aligns with their gender, but that's not everyone. That means there are a lot of others. About a third of people have a fursona who, there were other options, rarely or sometimes or always, like there are other options available to them. And so for a third of people, it is not exclusively the same gender as them.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, that could be, their fursona is a way to explore areas of gender. It could be a character. It could be, fun, interesting, creative, get yourself in the mind of someone else, try, test out, femininity or masculinity, or there could be a lot of reasons why they do that. But I thought having a fursona that is not your gender is interesting. So now we get to things that are more directly, I think, comparable to LGBT community. How out are furries?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
55% of furries said that many or most of their friends know about them being a furry. About 35% of furries said they were out to some or most of their family. So, if I saw that number with LGBT people, I'd be like, man, 2/3 are not out to family, which, families, I think some of the more dangerous or risky people to come out to, or that, there's a lot of like heavy like gravity to coming out, that, if you're rejected by your like family, that, so like 2/3 aren't out. So,
well, and how much of that is like, I don't know, it's not a fetish, it's not a orientation, it is a choice. Like,
interesting, Mike. Is it a choice?
I don't know.
Well, what the data says is
Great.
31% said yes, it is a choice, and 38% said no, it is not a choice.
Those numbers add up to way less than 100.
Yes, there was an I don't know option.
Okay, great.
Okay. And a third just vanished right when we asked the question. So, yeah.
A third said, woof.
Yeah, so this is something I didn't expect, and is interesting. Is 38% of people said no, it's not a choice. And I think a common, we were talking about like, acceptance and how out they are to family, and I think that, it's clear that this has such a big range of people. I think in trying to liken it to something in the LGBT umbrella, I think that the downside of that is, every group has its unique qualities that are not comparable to other groups or categories. I think something about furries that I'm learning is there's a range of people. Some people just like the shows or art, or like being in the community, or have these interests that is useful, and this is not their identity. They don't have a fursuit, they don't like, they most have a fursona, so there's something going on there, but like most aren't the people walking around in a fursuit saying this is who I am. But there is a subcategory of people who say this is who I am, that this is very core to my identity, and have a fursuit or have sex and it is, you know, something that is sexual and part of them. So there are people that say that they identify as, you know, either physically or spiritually with animals. So there's a big range of people that are included in this community.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. I was mostly thinking about like, I'm not out to a lot of people as a D&D player, you know? Like,
Yeah.
but I get what you're saying. It's more complicated than that. It's not merely a hobby for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that there is something that's, I think that's fair. I think maybe for some people, yeah, like how distressing or does it impact you that you're not out to people, or, you know, maybe it's like, well, that doesn't bother me. I don't feel the need to, like, I don't need to explain all the hobbies that I do. So maybe for some people it's fine. And maybe for some people it is intentionally hiding because they know that they will get judged or shamed, or like, I mean, I wonder, like sometimes I avoid talking about D&D or don't mention it just because I don't, one, it's like not core to who I am. And also, like, if I mention this to some new person, I don't know what they'll think of me. So there's a little bit of like, although it's low importance to me, there's a little bit of like, I'm avoiding it because of like prejudice or stigma. So I wonder if people, even if it is a hobby or an interest, if they do avoid talking about it just because they're like, man, the second I say that I'm a furry or I'm involved in the furry community or what have you, like, God, I don't want to get into this with whoever this is.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the numbers. Go download the Fur Science book.
Do it. Go download it. So now I'm damn it.
What?
Well, Kyle, I was gonna, because we were on the subject of yiffing, at least for a little bit there. There's also an entire set of like dictionary and like a slang dictionary of yiffing terms, and I was going to see if you could guess what any of them were based on like what they sound like.
Is this an urban yifftionary?
It's on Wikifur, but like
nice.
They have a whole section of mature terms used by the furry community. They're all yiffing related, and some of them I think are really. I was just going to see if like, hey, maybe Kyle could like get some of these.
Yeah, get that yiff. Okay, let's do it.
Okay, great. First, let's just start with
first.
Yeah, let's just talk. How about first meat sex?
Oh no, I'm not going to get any of these. That's where you take your two steaks and you rub them together and you go, I love you, because your parents never bought you Barbies.
Yep, that's exactly right. You did so good.
Thank you.
No, it's the term that plushies use with each other to describe the act of sexual intercourse with a non-plushie, also known as a biological.
Oh, hold on. Is plushie the same as a furry?
It's like a subset. Plushies are like furries who are specifically into like stuffed animals as being like their fursona is stuffed animal adjacent, still anthropomorphized, but it's like way more teddy bear than actual bear.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay, there are so many subcategories within furry. Like brony, some people will consider them a subcategory of furries. Like that's a whole debate that I didn't even like write down. Okay. Meat sex. To have a group of plushies together talking about like the craziness of having sex with just a physical human with no, like the fact they'd be like, oh, like you had sex with a human man, like wow, what novelty. That's so funny to me.
I gave up meat sex years ago.
Yeah,
I'm a vegan now.
I'm a vegan plushie.
Oh god.
And I get stuffed.
Okay, next. How about clopping?
Clopping? I think that's the when two furries have sex, that's the noise when you like that's the noise you clop their ass.
That is incorrect, but
I expected so.
Hilarious and closer than you might think. So clopping it is onomatopoeia. It is a noise, it is a sound that they're going for, but it is the sound of a horse's footsteps, like clip clop. And so clopping is a euphemism for a brony jacking off.
Hot.
Yeah, sure.
Clop on me, baby. So I'm just trying to figure out the lingo I need to get more people to have orgasms on me, and this is useful. Honor in me, I guess is what I should say. Oh, I could. The other one is helpful too, because I could be your meat. What was it? Meat. I could be your meat savior or what have you.
Meat sex.
Yeah. I could be your meat sex.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Keep going. We could keep going.
How about whamadoodle?
That's when you're playing Pictionary and you have to draw the band Wham, and the resulting drawing is a whamadoodle.
Wham, but they're all like, well, they're all furries. You draw them as furries, but they're also like, yeah, they're it's like a golden doodle also, right? Like they're part poodle, part wham, part poodle.
You know, those classic part wham, part golden doodle.
So whamadoodle is just penis or phallus.
Okay.
The external sexual reproductive organ with or without a scrotum.
Sure. And who needs it?
Let's see. How about let's go with Thor. What is Thor?
I mean, okay. If we're not going the obvious, then I'm gonna say, I can't come up with anything but thinking about Thor.
Yeah.
What about Thor? No, I got nothing.
My first joke thought would be like, if you take a horse dick big enough, you're gonna be Thor the next day.
Okay. I couldn't even come up with a joke answer. Boy, that's bad podcasting.
It is a jelly dildo in the shape of a horse's penis. It is 24 inches long, and the head of the toy alone is the size of a human fist. But it's an actual. It was put out by a company called Zeta Creations, and apparently this gigantic dildo has become an in-joke in the furry community.
Wow. So like Thor is the brand? Like is that a brand or just
the model? The model.
The model.
Yeah.
Damn, because this is good to know, because if someone says, do you want to take Thor, I would be like, obviously, but you just get some clarification. Ask one question before you say yes, is all I'm saying.
Yep. I don't know if this one's pronounceable or not, but it's IIMYI.
In case you missed it, wait, what acronym? I is Mott a Yoyer. No, I don't know what it is.
It stands for if it moves, yiff it.
Ooh, I don't love. Okay, explain this to me before I bring my judgment to it.
No, your judgment is correct, I think, in a lot of ways. It's a keyword that you tag erotic fiction with online, indicating that it is commonplace in the story for characters to casually engage in sexual activity with one another, at least insofar as it applies to the main characters of the story.
Okay.
So it's but you're right that there's a problematic overtone there of, I guess, if it moves, yiff it, as long as there's consent. Like maybe it's too long to abbreviate.
Yeah. And especially erotic fiction, there's, that's a place where it's okay to explore some fantasies that may not be chill or what have you, and that's a good place for it. That's a good outlet and an acceptable outlet. So
Yep. How about to wingerize?
I mean, is this just to add wings to, like, if your fursona is like a chicken or?
Yeah, I mean that's a
Falcon?
that's a great thought. And
that sounds like a no. That sounds like nice for no. Okay.
It's named for a guy whose name was Doug Winger, and apparently he had a whole motif of art in which the furry characters were hyper endowed. Think giant boobs, massive clitorises, huge dick and balls, just outlandish, massive sizes. And so to anything to do with that is wingerized or wingerization.
Man, what a lost opportunity that wingerize has nothing to do with wings in the furry community. God. All right.
How about Boink Space?
I mean, is that an online community where you can have furry sex virtually?
Another missed opportunity. I think I like
Ah,
yours
yeah.
better. Like as a thing, it's a term that plushies use for the spot on a plush toy that is pleasing to poke sexually. So,
Like the
like,
prostate of the
yeah,
of
it's my
okay.
understanding. Okay, I plushies. If there are plushies out there listening, please write in and let me know. But it's my understanding that because plushies want to be anthropomorphized stuffed animals, and most stuffed animals don't have genitals, there's this whole thing about like, but there's still a part on the plushy body that's like the G spot or the prostate that
Huh.
poking it is how you get them off, and
Oh.
that's their boink space.
I would think it'd be the little like ball or whatever that's inside that you squeeze and it talks. Like if I squeeze it and it makes a noise, that's like my sexual target now, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I like that. I really like that.
I just, making up stuff up.
And I had one more. Where did it go? Oh, yeah. Uh, unbirth or unbirthing.
I mean, this unbirthing just sound this okay. We talked about this on a recent episode. It sounds like getting in a kangaroo pouch or something. It's like a human going back inside the body of someone else.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so
It's like fisting for
yes,
your whole body.
you're absolutely right. Like it on a number of levels, but not completely. So it's also
A number of levels except the correct one.
well, no, like you're totally in the ballpark. So
Okay.
unbirthing or rewhelping is used to describe the paraphilia involving the desire to be swallowed alive by female genitalia. So a female furry takes another one into her womb and gestates that fur for a time as her own unborn child.
And then does
There's
she
a less
re-poop
common.
you out?
Yep, yep.
Gotcha.
There's a
That's
less
what I call
common but still
birthing.
significant. Right, pooping.
Yeah.
There's a less common but significant minority also practicing eubivore, wherein the female unbirther's body ultimately consumes the unbirthed. So,
Hmm.
like, you get put back up in there and then, like, absorbed. Um, Another variant on this is males absorbing others, generally other males, as a form of male pregnancy. This is known as cockvore and involves hypertrophilia and or macrophilia. Um, and these are sexual fetishes that exist only within the realm of furry fantasy art and stories. I've also seen them like not in the furry community. The association there is sort of incomplete.
Well, like
But yeah,
there's vor and there's like a macrophilia. There's like other things that seem to be related to this, but they also seem to have like very specific things that like are similar to, but like more specific around their community.
yep, yep, yep.
Huh.
Anyway, that's a bunch of stuff that I just like stole off of this Wikipedia article or WikiFur article. But
What
I
is
thought
this podcast but stealing things from other places and saying them out loud?
exactly right. Yeah.
I know you just talked a bunch about yiffing, but I think we should go into the history. We haven't talked about where all this came from.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Yeah. So,
Okay.
so there's a couple of schools of thought, right? Like, oh, we should definitely talk before we leave with it, yiffing. But I
Oh.
think that this is a good segue piece, just like to briefly touch on the fact that pups and pup play are not furries.
Oh.
There's some confusion about that out there in the world, but the reason it's history adjacent is they come from different places. So pup
Interesting.
play and pup society emerged as an offshoot of the leather community, and that's why they typically are leather hoods, leather or hard plastic tails. There's a big crossover with like harnesses or
Yeah.
leather or rubber clothing and suits. But it is not. It's like it's understandable how it's related, right? Because pups are all
Yeah.
about like getting into a headspace that has to do with
Yeah.
acting like or being an animal. But it's definitely not furries. Furries were their own thing. It didn't necessarily start out as super queer, although it has landed there. They have different
Huh.
etymologies, and they're different communities and come from different places.
I would just from the outsider, that's very helpful because I probably would have thought they were like an offshoot or something. But it also seems like they're close enough that I would think they'd want to like, hey, want to combine and be all together. Like this seems like lesbians and gays are like, hey, we got some similarities. Let's be in the same little tent here. So that's surprising to me that that's like an important distinction.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that like I agree with you, but one of the things is that like pups when they're super in pup space don't talk, right? Like they are animals, and so like their vibe is
Mm.
a human expression of an animal form, but whereas furries are doing kind of the opposite, right? Like this is a animal that walks on 2 feet and speaks and
Yeah, it's
is
intentionally anthropomorphized. It's like intentionally making human characteristics out of this.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So pups are like a de-anthropomorphization, and
Yeah.
furries are anthropomorphizing. So
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. Okay, that makes sense to me. It's like kind of the root distinction or big distinction.
yeah, yeah.
Mike, where do furries come from?
Where do furries come from? So there's a bunch of theories about like the where to truly say the modern furry fandom phenomenon came from. We can look back at like all of human history, and we've been drawing people with animal stuff associated with them for like prehistory, right?
Since
The
ever. Yeah.
earliest examples of human art. Like if you, there are Egyptian gods and goddesses like Anubis and Bastet and Horus that had animal heads on human bodies. So like we've been thinking about this for a really long time, and
Wow, I did not think there. This is such an interesting analog to even the word gay or someone that's like today we might say this person is trans, but they didn't have that word, so we can't call them that. So someone who's like drawing and actively like chipping off on caves or however the fuck they did that, like these kind of anthropomorphized like figures and doing this artistic stuff, like that's what today we would call a furry. But I don't think I should go back in time and be like Egyptians were very
yeah.
furry.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean,
Huh.
I'm going to say something that's potentially even more problematic, so enjoy this. But like there are the stereotypes of like shamanistic rituals, especially Native American tribes who do a dance around a fire wearing the skin of whatever animal it was that they had killed. There's definitely you could it's easy to draw some parallels there, right? Of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the tribal shaman guy, the medicine man, whatever is the right connotation for that context, it is kind of being a furry a little bit. Like you can
But
you
is it
can
doing it like I'm anthropomorphic, like I am becoming this animal? Or is it like showing off the kill or like, some kind of like threat? Like that seems like, like pups, like it could be related, but they're not like, they're not getting into the persona of this animal.
I agree that it's not a slam dunk. I totally agree with that. Just
But I hear you. There's a lot of things that are like similar in community and is hard to decide what's defined as what, especially if you look back.
yeah, yeah. Do you remember Aesop's fables, like the tale of
Yeah.
the fox and grapes? Like that fox talks. Like there are lots of animals in Aesop's fables that talk. So
Yeah.
it's an example of a really pervasive, well-known, common, um, adding human qualities to animals. And of course, then it all ends with Bojack Horseman. No, I'm kidding. Um,
Oh my god! I bet furries fucking love that show.
I bet so too. Except it's
Huh? I, that
I
am I a furry? I love that show.
don't know. Do you want to be Mr. Peter Butter or whatever? Like
I would fuck Mr. Peanut Butter for sure. For
okay.
surezies.
All right. When's your next therapy session? I think you need to unpack some
I
of
think, Mike, I think we're in it. I think it's happening right now. No, I mean, okay. Like, come on, Mr. Peanut Butter's hot. Like, don't take this away from me.
Okay, I won't.
Have
Do
you
it.
seen him?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, would bang, but this is your therapy session, not mine.
Oh, right. This is not about you. This is about me. Yeah. So it all started.
Yeah.
No.
So there's also a heavy like component of children's stories and children's novels and illustrated books for kids that become more popular during the Industrial Revolution and Victorian era. And it's like Lewis and Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. There's a bunch of like the rabbit talks and the Cheshire Cat talks. They all have um, uh, not only are they imbued with anthropomorphic characteristics, but they also were often illustrated. So you would see, characters with some human traits in a context where they were communicating. Let's see, Beatrix Potter's illustrated children's books.
Oh my God, Alice in Wonderland, like the growth or shrinking thing. I bet that's rife with some micro or macrophilia kind of online, sexual reinterpretation vibes.
If I could eat a bunch of cupcakes and get a bigger dick, I absolutely would. Alice in Wonderland style.
If I could eat a bunch of dicks and get bigger cupcakes, I would do that.
Yes. Great. Yours is probably doable.
I don't know. Some online internet ads say that you could get a bigger dick by doing eating some cupcakes, and they also say Obama's free car loan will get me a free credit score or something. So believe what you read.
Yeah. Have you been contacted to talk about your extended warranty, Kyle?
So often, especially for someone who does not have a fucking car. Like, hey, trade in your car. I don't fucking have a car.
Right.
That's not part of this. That's not what we're doing here.
Back to kids' books. Beatrix Potter had the Tales of Peter Rabbit. That's all of that's 1800s. Rudyard Kipling and the Jungle Book. Bunch of animals talk in there, and we'll talk about animation here in just a little bit. Disney also made a animated film, The Jungle Book, and it gets a lot of credit for furry stuff in the modern zeitgeist.
Okay, I don't know if this is. Did you read about Zootopia?
No, I mean, it's in a list. It's in a list of things that might have made furries
yiffed
as kids, get the idea impressioned on them. Yeah.
Okay. Then here's a side thing that I also didn't know where to fit in.
Sure.
There are a bunch of things about Disney marketed Zootopia to furries intentionally. All these things you're talking about are just things that then furries may help them realize they're furry, or become the central for fandom or art or what have you. But there are all these things that are here's proof that Disney intentionally marketed Zootopia to furries. There are emails from, and this is how I don't think it's conspiracy. I really do think it's true. I think there's here's an email from an agency that was working for Disney that encouraged furries to attend and take pictures, or there's all this different proof, and I believe it. I could see someone being yo, there's this category of people that will yiff their pants if they see this movie, and let's get them out and talking and promoting it. We got our Buzz Street team already locked and loaded. They've been waiting for I would, if I was in marketing, I would say absolutely capitalize on this community, and also I would find a way to distance myself, finding a marketing agency. So I totally believe that Disney intentionally marketed Zootopia to furries.
Yeah. And we see the same thing with gay people, right? Throw a rainbow on Bud Light, and now suddenly they want us to buy it. But this is even more directly. This is even more directly speaks to that community, and it just kind of makes sense, right?
Is that, do they have is there furbaiting? Is there a furry version of that?
That for sure is what it should be called now, forever. If it's not
You're
already.
Welcome, furries.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my tangent. We're back into the history.
Yeah. But all of that's to say that we've been anthropomorphizing animals in fiction for a really, really long time, and I've seen over and over again now, though, people pointing to The Jungle Book, which was Disney's 1967 film adaptation of Rudyard Kipling's book of the same name, but even more so, Robin Hood.
Robin Hood came up for me. If you didn't say that, I was going to for sure. Yeah,
the animated film Robin Hood, and I think that's really interesting because there was also when was The Sword and the Stone? I remember as a kid watching The Sword and the Stone when Merlin transforms him into a squirrel, and then he basically gets down with that girl squirrel, and I found that whole scene weirdly hot. I had a erection about it that I did not understand.
I had an erection about it. It's my favorite phrase.
That was in 1963. but yeah,
When you were
yeah.
a small child in 1963 watching this?
No, I was not. But like
Oh, that's what you implied.
back in the day, they would re-release animated films, and you
Yeah,
would go to the theater and get strange boners you didn't understand.
sure.
So so yeah, go ahead.
Other things that often come up with My Little Pony does come up, and again, there's like some that there's a bigger issue or a bigger thing going on there with bronies, and they are I don't know. Anyway, and Sonic the Hedgehog comes up a lot.
Yeah, the Sonic the Hedgehog thing is really interesting because I don't think it was a cartoon or a movie until like later. Like Sonic was just a
Mm,
video game character. So
mm, mm.
I think that's really, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see. One thing that to really talk about though is the fact that furry fandom, a lot of it comes from cartoons and from animation and magazines, and it also started fairly early having an association with sex. Whether that spoke to the whole fandom or not doesn't is a different subject.
Yeah.
But there's a comic, an erotic comic strip and comic book created by Reed Waller and Kate Worley called Omaha the Cat Dancer. And it looks a lot like drawings and stuff that you'll see in the fandom today. And it launched in 1978 and was published clear up until, uh, gosh, when did they stop? The 90s. They were still going strong in the 90s anyway. But it has a whole series of like all of these anthropomorphized characters, and a lot of them are like exotic dancers and escorts, and there's a lot of like sex that happens in there.
Is this one of the earlier like? Is this around where it started? Is this like an early example of it?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So um, then then really it takes off and becomes like a huge thing when conventions start happening, and
Mm-hmm.
that whole uh, phenomenon really gets started in, I think it was the 80s. I just lost my notes, so that's problematic.
I remember first seeing it on MTV. I don't know why that's come up several episodes in a row, but like on MTV, I think it's like True Life I'm a Furry, I believe
Mm,
was where it came up. And that to me was my introduction to it. And they talked a lot about the fursuit and furry sex. That's where I get a lot of my original assumptions or stereotypes about them. But that was much later than you're describing.
yeah, so apparently furries started having a presence at like science fiction conventions as early as 1980, and
Wow.
it's believed that 1980 is when the term furry was coined to
I didn't
describe
think it would be that
these
early.
people.
I didn't think they'd be at conventions that early. That's surprising to me.
Yeah, there was uh, a discussion group that met at some science fiction conventions and some comic conventions in the 80s, all throughout the 80s. And then by 1989, here it is, 1989 is when the first actual furry specific convention was held. It was called Conference Zero, and was held in Costa Mesa, California.
Huh.
And then as the internet rose, so did more opportunities for people to find each other, create community, etc. And it really just took off from there. You talk about True Life. I'm a furry as being like one of the ways that like people found out, or like we found out about furries as a society.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
a lot of credit is given to a CSI episode. Um,
Oh.
no, sorry, season 4, episode 5 was called Fur and Loathing, and it
That's
aired October 30th, 2003. And there was a victim that was a man in a raccoon fursuit named Robert Pitt. And so the Gil Grissom and Catherine Willows, the two main like investigator folks
CSIs.
in CSIs, yeah, they end up going to a fictional plushies and furries convention called PAFCon, and there's shenanigans ensue, except in a like dark criminal kind of way. But that episode of that show, which was wildly popular at the time, uh, it gets a lot of credit for introducing the concept of furries as even being a thing in American culture.
Hmm. And that seems like one of those frustrating things. Like if you're part of, like, I don't know, there seems like could be like this weird mixture of, to have a portion that is, not everyone, but there is some truth to that representation, to what they're showing. There are some people that align with that match that. So there's like, this is getting out to the mainstream. So it helps inform people that you're not alone, especially, this is around, or, around internet times, or before the internet was so widespread, that like, this is one of the ways to teach people, or someone might learn about furries for the very first time through this and know they're not alone. And also then perpetuates these really specific ideas that are very much not true of the entire community. Like, it seems like such a mixture of, like, I think of other representation with LGBT people where it's like, great, Philadelphia, also like, God, does it always have to be our representation is about HIV or AIDS? It's
Right,
like this,
right.
but
Yeah.
but that is a true part of, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of complexities and similarities in like media representation.
Yep.
One thing I just realized, like, going back to Disney, speaking of like, that's not representation, but like, it seems like there's this cool thing if they did market to furries, which I think they did. Like, there's this, that's kind of cool that they know and identify their audience, and but also if they're not admitting it outright, then, which I don't think they are. Like, a couple articles I read said Disney did not respond for comment or whatever. It seems like there's something exploitative about trying to get their marketing and viral promotion and what have you of this movie without, they don't want to, though, publicly connect themselves with that community. There's something that feels real shitty about that too. And I think it's so much of it is because of the stigma. Like, oh, Disney loves furries. I bet like right-wing conservatives would lose their goddamn fucking minds about that. Like,
Yeah.
And it sucks because so much of it is based on the stigma and prejudice of what that means, not actually, especially like a movie that, among other people, is targeted at kids. Like, I don't know. And I'm suddenly angry at Disney over this, and I just happened now.
Yeah, I mean, like, Disney has gotten in more trouble for less in just the last year, right? Like, they walk a careful line because people are crazy when it comes to their kids, and like, freak the fuck out. So yeah.
Okay, maybe I have two things that I could talk about, and I don't know if there's things we need to talk about, or for one should be a Patreon. But I'll help me out here on what we should do.
Okay.
Did you come across? Fuck, I should have learned how to pronounce this. Therian or Therian?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, we can either talk about that, which that seems interesting, but I'm very worried about it. And there's also the question of should furries be part of the LGBT community?
Okay.
Which I think, unless you think we need to cover both in this, like maybe one can be the last segment and one can be a Patreon segment.
Yeah, let's talk about the LGBT thing, and then let's save the Therians for.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So just to quickly, because I think it's at least something we should mention, and that does make me feel a little safer talking about it as Patreon.
Yeah.
Lock that content down, because it could be there is a subset, not the majority at all, but there is a subset of people that feel that they are, like, with some degree of dysphoria, they are, some portion of them is human. That is, non-human animal. So we'll get into that. Another word, otherkin, that is in this kind of vein. But okay, should furries be in the LGBTQ community?
No. Great.
Okay. Cool. Well, that was great. Such a good build up for that. No, that was my initial instinct too. And I read a little bit more about. I read this article on the internet. The internet. That's who gets all the credit for everything we talk about. Thanks, internet. And some posts on Reddit and Quora. And I think it's useful to think through it and talk about it. And that can help, mostly as almost a thought exercise, or just to be clear, I have not seen so many furries are LGBT people. And I have not seen this big push for amongst that community to be no, definitely part of that community. So this is not coming from a source of all these furries are pushing for it. But I still think it was interesting for me to really think through and challenge my gut assumption that nope, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, so I think my general, like the quick version of my like internal calculus is
Yeah.
just like LGBT is you can use the queer umbrella to refer to that queer is LGBT, but then like Miss Talk gave me the like turned me on to the GSRM, gender, sexuality, and relationship minorities, as
Yep.
another word, another term to use as an umbrella term for everything. I suppose furries could be a relationship minority, right? There's a lot of like ways in which they interact, and I don't know. That's maybe pushing it, but they're
Huh.
like then there's the other like sort of overloaded meaning of the word queer. Queer meaning not mainstream. They're definitely not mainstream, and that's why they stick out, and that's why I think people are so fascinated and interested and want to talk about them and joke about them, etc.
Yeah.
So like I I think they're definitely queer, but not capital Q queer as in LGBTQ plus. And so that's why my answer is no. But there's something going on for sure.
Yeah. No, I think I completely agree. GSR and like thinking about that felt a little bit more likely for me to like the fact that I was like, oh, maybe that then made me rethink the LGBTQ like kind of area as well. But yeah, like, but it's interesting you mentioned I thought you were going to say the sexual part. And again, that's not the majority, but for some people that this is a sexual, like part of their sexual, like kind of experience. And so like, I don't know if you have, and that in a sexual thing that they will get judged on, like, so definitely a minority of people in the world. Like, I don't know. So maybe there's a
Yeah,
subset of furries that could be included.
yeah, yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned the word queer because I think we both disliked the kind of phrase like culturally queer, or there are people
Right.
that they're like, well, no, I'm not, lesbian or gay or trans or whatever, but I'm culturally queer. So I'm part of the LGBTQ community. And it's like,
Right.
I was like, you can't just be like a quirky, like my hair's curly, I'm queer, like,
Right. Yep.
okay, that's not
Yep.
how it works.
Yep.
But so maybe that's like just without getting into what that actually means or actual examples, maybe that's why if I think of culturally queer or queer, not like you said, I think you said it like not capital Q queer, but like that feels like a good definition of queer, outside of the norm, uncommon, faces stigma, that it would make sense to me if because of that experience identified as queer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Let us know in the
Another
comments.
let us know in the comments. Yeah, I'm very interested in, again, like because I read like Reddit posts and Quora posts and articles. It's hard to tell who actually is an LGBT furry, and their opinion matters most to me in this context. But um, uh, I think another big thing is like if someone that says I am queer, like they don't owe you more of an explanation. So if
Yeah.
that fits for them, that's useful. We can talk, as discussion or like it's interesting to talk about some of these things in theory or what communities, what different communities are there out there, but on an individual level, like you're not, if someone said they're queer, then done, they owe you nothing more. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
another kind of like, there's a distinction between what we're talking about and it's interesting and let's think it through versus what I would do on a day-to-day basis. Like I would
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
actually question. um I think another part of this is I think about kinksters
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
in a similar vein, or people in BDSM, like that's very, very much a sexual minority. So if we're going that, like that is, BDSM is a sex thing. Kinksters, that's primarily a sex thing. So it's that to me, it's like, but are they in that? So GSRM, yes. Are they in the LGBTQ community? Lots of people would argue that yes, given their connection to the gay community, given their involvement in things like Stonewall, like a lot of people would say yes, they are in the LGBTQ community. Of course, when we talked about like Pride and their people's negative reactions to like kink at Pride, I think a lot of times because they don't understand what kink at Pride actually looks like, they think it's just people fucking on a float, which it's not.
Right.
But
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are people that would disagree with including them in this community. But that's another group that's like, it's interesting. um it's not the norm of what we would think of as what the majority of people think of as being queer LGBTQ. But
Yeah. I think there's also a lot less like legal threat to their existence than there is for other those of us in the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, but is that a requirement? Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, there are a lot of things that is like, you know, that are not necessarily the definition, but you think about like legal threats. Are people people face stigma and bullying? It like that's the flip side. Like, yeah, absolutely face stigma because of this identity, but that alone doesn't make you part of the community.
Right. Yeah.
Another part is that subset of people that said, yes, this is part of my identity. I was born this way. I did not choose this. It's not a choice. And again, that's not everyone. That's about a third of furries say that. So it's not everyone, but there are some people that this is not a hobby. This is not a choice. It's not, putting on a costume. This is not just, I like the drawings or I like Sonic the Hedgehog. It is more innate and personal and important and part of their identity than others. Yeah. So that's another thing that I think about when I think about this.
I will also add, I think that there's a danger in including them in the LGBT community unintentionally. Like we covered it in the news last week, like parents freaking the fuck out because they think that there are children in schools who identify as a cat, and the school is putting out litter boxes for them and letting them answer meow to the teacher. Like to equate all of that is problematic.
Oh, okay.
What?
But I would, at that specific point, not saying that they're definitely part of the community or anything, but like I would argue against that specific point in saying that that's the same argument that is used why we should not include trans people in the community is like, well, there's much higher stigma, and could that prevent all of us from gaining rights by including like so I really dislike that argument for like the others' view of that, and we may be held back because other people view it in a certain way negatively. I don't like using that as a reason for not including someone in the community.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, well, like, I still don't. I think a lot of everything that I read when I read about this, there was like one article that I'll have to find and post or something. But when I looked on Reddit and Quora, all the answers were like, no, not part of the community, including several people that said they were both furry and LGBT and said like, no, I'm part of the community because I'm LGBT. So as far as I can tell, at least people online who said they were furries said no, not part of the community. Also, I think a lot of furries are queer and are part of the community, not because of their furry identity, but for other reasons. And I could see a smaller subset of people that either, sex is part of it for them, or they like their identity. They believe this is part of their identity that, like you said, like I could see is using the word queer. But on the whole, I don't think furry automatically makes you part of the community. I just think there's a lot of overlap. So that's kind of where I landed. And also, like I said, would value if there's a more definitive, like I could not find, here's what LGBT furries think and want. I think there was something like, I think I said something once where it's like, all these territories in the US deserve statehood, but then someone like helped clarify like, yeah, but do they want statehood? Like Puerto Rico has voted yes they do. Others don't want to statehood. They don't want that. So like this conversation about that is moot if no one is advocating for this. Like we should respect what they want and think and believe more than anything.
Yeah, do they probably not want to be part of the United States?
Yeah, furries hate the US. I wouldn't be surprised. So do I get it, but I still thought it was like interesting to think through and talk about the that idea.
Yeah. Two things I'm just going to awkwardly fit in here. I played the Cowardly Lion in high school, and so like I think if I was going to be a furry, that would be my gateway drug, and it did not happen.
Yeah, you had all the opportunities to get into furriness, and it didn't speak to you. So you're coming out as non-furry.
Coming out as non-furry. Yep. Unfortunately,
you explored in your childhood, and you tried it on, and
Yep. I'll give. I'll find some pictures so we can get them on social media because they're ridiculous. And then the other thing, fursuits apparently are useful sometimes for people on the autism spectrum. That like as a therapeutic device or as a way to minimize like social anxiety. That there's a there's a I think some of them find it comforting. It's super interesting to me. That popped up in a couple of places. Anyway,
on the First Science website, there is an entire section that's still being developed, so there's nothing under it, but that talked about autism in the community. So it does seem like that there is a big or overrepresented portion, but it just, the page just said coming soon, so we'll find out in the future what the research says. But yeah, I also came across that.
So did we do it?
I one other assorted thing I'm just going to throw out there is, I think if someone does, let's say, show up to our communities in a fursuit or talk about being a furry with us, like with our community, one, I want to make sure that it's like a totally accepted thing, and everyone gets to kind of be themselves and be who they are, unless who you are as a Nazi. And I think that is someone trusting us in our community by, we talked about a lot of people, a majority of people are not out to their families. So by, by showing up somewhere in a fursuit or talking about your fursona, like, I think that's trusting us with something that they could face backlash against. So I both appreciate anyone who's done that, and hopefully we can welcome that and value that they are trusting us with that information that is risky for someone to put out there.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yeah. Be nice, everybody. Just be chill.
Yeah. Be chill. Yeah. All right. I think we did some interesting furry things.
We talked about furries a lot, Kyle.
Some would say the entire time.
Some would say.
Some, not me, but some would. Yeah.
So you want to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
All right, let's take a break.
Fur break.
This is the part where Mike and Kyle take a break.
So are we back?
We're back.
We're bat.
Okay. Yeah. Technically, you get credit for that, but I don't love it. Well, we said we did it at the end, but one thing that we missed in talking about this.
Yeah.
The fursuit of happiness.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Now we've done it.
Okay, great.
I liked that more than you did. That's fine. I didn't like your thing, so that's fair. Okay. We're going to do our Gayest Straightest.
We're going to do our Gayest Straightest, but first, our website is gayishpodcast.com.
We have communities on Discord, Facebook groups, Spaces, and we are on social media at Gayish Podcast. And join some of our, I think, Discord. I don't know if we have a Furries channel, but you can see if there are other Furries and chat with us about it there.
Yep. Our hotline, you can send us text messages or leave us voicemails, is 5855-GAYISH. That's 585-542-9474. Standard rates apply.
Our email is gayishpodcast@furries.com.
Yeah, our physical mailing address is Post Office Box 19882, Seattle, Washington, 98109. Real quick, this week, everybody, register to vote. Make sure that you're registered to vote. And if you're not, register to vote. There's a very important election coming up that may or may not decide the fate of the entire universe. So, in the United States anyway, coming up in November. So yeah, please register to vote. Also,
register to vote and vote Democrat, because Republicans are attacking our community.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you believe in the Republican values or ways of life, great. Do that in the future when they're not playing such a huge role in destroying our communities. For this one, you got to do Democrat.
Just suck it up.
Yeah.
Suck it off. Okay. And also, it's a local gay bar review. This time I'm going to talk to you about, I don't know how it's said, and I should have asked somebody. It's Ku Bar or KU or K. I don't know, but it's I think it's Ku. I think it's Ku Bar in London, and there in Soho. It was fucking fantastic. It was very hot that day, but walked in, and it was like everybody who talked to us at the door, everybody on staff, appeared to be gender nonconforming in some way, and that was either femme clothing on male presenting people or a lot of androgyny happening. Like it was really, really fascinating that every single person that worked there that I saw was gorgeous and gender nonconforming in some way. Went upstairs to an upstairs lounge. There was fucking amazing music. The music was fantastic. The girls that I was with, all of us, just like everyone was a banger. I will say, however, it was way too loud, and I got cranky and wanted to go at some point just because of the volume. But it was adorable. It was cute. It's fantastic. I loved it there. It's very, very queer. It's open to everybody. Like, it was not a gay male space. It was a very
Yeah.
like all over the place space in terms of representation. 4 dildos.
Is that -1 dildo for the music volume?
Correct.
Yeah. That's, I mean, was it in line with the volume that dance clubs and gay bars have? Just Daddy Mike doesn't necessarily love the loud music places.
It was about the same, but no space to dance. There was no dance floor there. It was all lounge space. So it was like we're not physically enjoying the danciness of all of this music. It's just stifling conversation. And,
gotcha. Yeah.
And you, like, I'm used to screaming at a dance club, but screaming at a bar is not.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I got you.
Should we do our Gayest Straightest?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
My gayest is standing at the bar. I went to Dallas and I was at the bar at the hotel and I was like waiting to get a drink, but I was standing like a good distance away. And then other people started showing up to try to get drinks. And all of a sudden I was very conscious of everything about me. I was like, oh, I'm sitting too far away. People don't know that I'm in line. I should have been closer. I should have been more aggressive like a man. And then I started thinking about my pain and fingernails. And these are all like straight people that I don't know. So I like all of a sudden getting conscious of like everything about myself and how are people perceiving me because of how I'm standing and what I look like and all this stuff. That's my gayest. My straightest is, it was not the brief conversation where we talked about the Texas OU game. And I learned that, I mean, it's like a pretty gay straight thing, but like I learned after the fact that Texas won 49-0, which is like cool, but also at some point you kind of like, you know, I don't know, put in the C team or something. That's a lot to lose by. But yay, go Texas, hook 'em, I guess. What about you?
Hook 'em hornies. So the straightest thing about me this week was we, Gayish, with #1 in Panama this week.
Hey, Panama! Thanks for listening.
But the straightest thing about me is I could not get Van Halen's Panama out of my head. It would not go away all day long. It was Panama. It was so terrible. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, now that's on the playlist, Mike. So you've just cursed Perma Panama for us.
You're welcome, everyone. I think, you know, if I have to suffer, so do you, is a perfectly acceptable way to approach life. And then the gayest thing about me this week, I've been traveling for work again. I was in Boston and New York this week, and now I'm down in Palm Springs with fraternity brothers. But it was on this tour, just leaning in and openly checking out my male coworkers and comparing notes with my female coworkers.
Yeah. All right. You're putting your hat in the openly check out your male coworkers, everybody hat ring or whatever. All right, sure. Why not? Absolutely. You know, if they say anything about it, they're being homophobic. So what do you have to lose?
That's right. It like men have been objectifying women for however long in the workplace. Just a little taste of your own medicine, maybe.
Yeah, turnabout is fair gay.
We
have a listener's Gayest and Straightest who left us a voicemail, so we're gonna go ahead and play that.
Hello, Mike and Kyle. Thank you for creating such an entertaining, informative, and inclusive show. Gayish has been a helpful resource to re-navigate my sexuality as an adult. This week's Gayest: making out with the very charming wedding officiant after bartending at the ceremony. I complimented his suit jacket and immediately knew he was into me. Straightest: sitting outside the local dive bar drinking PBR from a red Solo cup and chatting up a cute raver chick who works as a piercer. We have a date set up for next week. Being open about who I am and what I like has made so many more connections and experiences possible. Thank you for the informed conversation topics, delightful banter, and for being vulnerable and sharing who you are with the world. I will strive to do the same. Sending love from Iowa. Thank you.
See, Kyle, we're doing our part for bi erasure.
Well, or pan erasure, or we don't know. But yeah.
Thanks for that. That's from Iowa, which is a state that totally exists for real.
Yeah, and we love it. And that was very sweet. We appreciate it.
Yeah. I guess we did it. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. There you go, furries. Hope you fucking enjoyed it.
Thank you, furries.
Get off our asses. Oh, thank you. Yes. Oh, I guess I should say yiff you, furries.
Yeah.
Also, I want to thank our super gap bridgers who may be all furries. This might be an exclusive furry community. I don't know.
You never know.
Thank you to John Crowley, Stephen Porsche, Yo Stossel, Harry Shaw, Josh Copeland, Jonathan Montanus, Forrest Snail, Patrick Martin, James Barrow, Steve Douglas, Explosive Lasagna, Just Jamie, Kevin Henderson, Donald Linsky, Thomas B., Dusty Sands, A.E. Coleman, Chris Cacciatorians, and Jerome York. We appreciate you more than everyone, even furries.
We heart you. This has been Gayish from the Chris Cacciatorian Studios. I'm Mike Johnson.
I'm Kyle Getz. Until next week, be butch, be fabulous, be you. I almost forgot what I said.
Yiff.
And I was like, yiff you and yiff her too. God, to go to the bathroom at a convention when you're in your fursuit? Fuck, man, that's annoying.